Hey, Ted.
Hey, Kelly. How are you?
Good, thanks. So happy to be with you today and with anybody else who's here listening to this conversation. We are super excited about the fourth annual Day of Giving coming up really quickly here in South Dakota, November 30th. So just a few weeks away. Again, the fourth annual South Dakota Day of Giving. So really exciting. Happy to have it a little bit earlier this year. So organizations have some time to focus in on end of year fundraising after a great South Dakota Day of Giving campaign. So we have about 430 organizations registered this year for the Day of Giving. So we're expecting lots of really great interaction and activities this year. I just wanted to remind everybody that we view the South Dakota Day of Giving as just a terrific opportunity to celebrate generosity across the state. So the NewMed Group, the Rural Philanthropy Institute, and many of our partners are continuing to work to make the day possible, and so many organizations finding a lot of benefit. So we love the opportunity to celebrate generosity, and we know that a couple of the purposes of a Day of Giving that have been really important for a number of organizations are, of course, one, to raise money, but just as important for a number of organizations is to raise awareness about the work they do and the needs that they support in the community. So this awareness raising is really a critical part of the South Dakota Day of Giving for organizations. And we are really lucky to have Ted Stevens with us today, who, in addition to being founder and principal at the NewMed Group, director at the Rural Philanthropy Institute, is the voice behind South Dakota Day of Giving. If you've been interacting with South Dakota Day of Giving, it's Ted, who also leads all of the creative work at the NewMed Group. So thanks, Ted, for joining for some expert tips today.
Sure. Yeah. Happy to be doing it.
So can you talk a little bit about the role that social media plays for participants in the Day of Giving?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, I guess the first thing that kind of comes to mind to me, Kelly, is that it depends, right? Like that's the short answer, because I think it can play a starring role for some organizations, right? And we've seen some really creative, innovative, fully engaged social media presences over the last 3 years. And in some cases, I think that social media has played a supporting role. And then in some cases it's played, no role at all. And that's okay, too. I think the neat thing about South Dakota Gives is that it allows nonprofits to meet their donors where they are, and meet their community where they are too. And that means that's not everybody's going to be online, right? Not everybody's going to be on social media.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to flip that question in some ways. I think about what's the role it's currently playing and how you as an organization communicate your work and your mission, and how can you connect with donors in your broader community in the way that you are already engaging with them on social media. So, if it's something that you engage with daily or weekly, then it's probably something that's going to be really critical to the success of the organization as it builds awareness or raises dollars on the giving day. And if it's something that you engage with, your community just a few times a month, then it's probably going to be something, that you use a little bit on Giving Day, but that you're probably going to want to explore some of those other avenues to be able to raise awareness and dollars. And then, for those organizations that have no social media presence for whatever reason, that's okay. Not everybody has to have one, right? And that means that it probably is not going to play a role at all. I also often think about the role that our personal presence on social media might play as well. So I remember I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I joined Facebook back in 2008 when it was still one of those things that you had to be at a college, enrolled at a college, and it was like 10 or 20 colleges to begin with.
Uh-huh.
And the University of Florida, where I went to grad school, was one of those. So, I had a ufl.edu email address, which means I could join Facebook. And then it was about like gathering as many friends as you possibly could, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
half the people you maybe had like a little minor acquaintance with, but really they were people that you didn't necessarily interact with every single day. So now when I look at my personal Facebook page, I have like 1,200 people, connected to my personal page.
Uh-huh.
1,150 of whom I probably never talked to, right?
Mm-hmm.
But those are all people within our own personal networks and our own personal relationships that we have that we can also use to engage on a day like this as well. So, for instance, I think that I probably have more friends connected to me on my personal Facebook page than some nonprofits that we work with do. So I think it's not just a question about like how do you use your organizational's social media on a day, but how are you also using your personal, if you have it, Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or Instagram or TikTok or Pinterest or
On and on.
Snapchat, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get the idea, right? To engage people in the work that you do, why you do it, and why you would hope those that are maybe closest to you, choose to support, the organization on that day.
It's a really good point, Ted, because not only your personal social media channels, but those of your board, of your volunteers, of other employees. So there may be more of a presence just based on the networks of other people involved in the organization.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But we also think of it like, oh, the organization's going to say this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what does Kelly think? What does Ted think? Look at all your friends who might be raising money for a family that, might be going through an illness and might need some medical support, medical financial support, right? Like what are the other ways that we engage the people that we're closest to raise awareness or raise dollars, to care about the things that we care about? Don't forget those people on this day as well.
So maybe we can talk in a bit about just creating awareness in general for your organization, even if you don't have social media. But in thinking specifically about social media and the Day of Giving, what do you think some of the elements of really successful social media posts are? What are some best practice kinds of things to keep in mind?
There's no hard or fast rule, to that. I could say like hashtag more. I could say always include a photo. I could say do a short post, do a long post, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that social media is watching everything that we do, the way that we engage with content and the way that we engage with people that might be following us, that there's not a hard and fast rule. What works for me might not work for you, and vice versa. So when I think about like what makes a good social media post, I think first of all, it's like identifying what works well for your organization. We know at South Dakota Gives, for instance, that when we bring ourselves, when we bring the energy and the excitement that you or I or somebody else that's helping to lead the day feels for South Dakota Gives, and feels about what we feel about philanthropy and the role that generosity can play in the community, when we bring that energy and enthusiasm that's kind of inherent to who we are as individuals to the social posts that we put out into the world, they're successful. And they're successful because they're authentic. And they have a personality, and they represent an element of who we are as individual people, right? Like social media at its core was intended to connect people. Mark Zuckerberg would still say that today, and I don't know if that's still true for Facebook.
Yeah,
but, that's a conversation for another day. But that's what it's intended to do, right? So how can you connect with somebody else on an individual level through social media? You know, if you notice too, if you're interacting with South Dakota Gives, for instance, we're not just posting something, you know, like, oh, hey, here's the prize this week, or here's the contest, or, you know, way to go, South Dakotans for peace and justice. You know, what we're also doing is actually engaging in conversation at the micro level with people who are interacting with us. And so
Mhm.
if someone comments on our wall, there's a really good chance that myself or somebody else, I mean, there's other people that are behind the social media post too. There's a really good chance that somebody is going to respond to that. And what
Mhm.
does that make you do? Respond to it as well, right? And so it's not just about like, oh, what am I going to post today, right?
Right.
It should be, how am I going to interact with the people that are engaged online with me, so that we can create a connection and conversation that hopefully leads to greater awareness, a better
Yeah.
understanding of the mission, philanthropic dollars.
Yeah, I have to say some of the my favorite things that I see happening on the social media platforms for that South Dakota Gives is a part of is when we're seeing organizations congratulate one another, share ideas, interacting in the way that you're talking about, even with one another.
Mhm.
I like to see those kinds of posts, and I think this is what a great creative group of people who love gifts. Right, we are seeing
Mhm.
gifts posted all of the time. What are some of the favorite things you see as people are interacting over social media as it relates to the Day of Giving?
You know, I think the neat thing, and maybe one of the biggest surprises in the first year that we started to do this, was how genuinely excited everybody was for one another, you know?
Mhm.
That there was a celebratory spirit to the day that you saw online and you saw through social media that I thought, you know, fed the energy and built the momentum for the
Yeah.
day. So just that genuine, again, I used the word a couple times now, authentic enthusiasm for one another and what we were hoping to collectively build as a state in the
Mhm.
single day, I think is something that has always kind of stuck with me, and I think that we try to leverage on the social media work that we do for South Dakota Gives. Um, you know, and then there's like the silly stuff uh, that, I mean, I remember like people dressed up, and I can't remember the organization now, but like people were dressed up as pigs and corn cobs and toothpaste, and you know, they were dressing up in these costumes, right? And they were ridiculous in the most memorable, thoughtful, and still mission driven way, right? Like you
Mhm.
still understood, you know what, um, you know, the dental nonprofit was raising money for, right?
Yep.
Through
The
their
Horizon
ridiculous,
Healthcare
yeah,
Foundation
there
in
you
their
go. That's,
toothbrush costumes. Mhm.
yeah. And so it still
Floss like a
related back to the
boss.
mission, but it made you laugh out loud.
Mhm.
You know, and like I didn't know there was an organization like that in the state, and so you're educated in that way, you know, as well. I also think that those um, people or organizations who are willing to like turn on the camera and, you know, is it Borderland Horse Sanctuary? Do I have that one right? I think
Mhm.
that's an
Mhm.
organization, right? Where, you know, we've seen um, them out with the horses, feeding them early in the morning, and it's cold. I mean, it's the end of November or the beginning of December, and we're getting the experience that they get every single day to take care of those aging, if I remember right, horses, right? And so all of a sudden that feels, we connect to that emotionally, right? If you're like my partner who loves animals, right? All of a sudden, like that's something I want to support, you know, because I can see that that's hard work, you
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
getting up in the morning before I do, you know, certainly getting bundled up and going out to make sure that these horses have food and are well taken care of. We get to see that when we turn the camera on ourselves and share in that experience with somebody else. And so, you know, that too is just something that's memorable to me over the years that,
Mhm.
you know, has allowed me to learn a little bit more about an organization and ultimately want to give to them
Yeah.
too.
So, Ted, what would you say to an organization that, like most all organizations, have a lot of priorities, more work to do than hours in the day, and there isn't a lot of time to be spending on social media? And
Mhm.
South Dakota Day of Giving has a number of different contests and prizes around letting us know what you're doing. How can an organization participate in some of that without having to hang on their social media all day long?
Yeah. You know, uh, the first thing I think about is you don't have to participate in everything, right? So, you know, um, it's not a race to participate in all the contests or the different opportunities to raise money in a way that gives you the best chance to do that, right? Pick those contests, if you will. I think have been really carefully selected to be as inclusive as they most possibly can be for all
Yep.
organizations, right? And some of them have to do with social media, and a lot of them, or more of them, I think this year than ever before, have to do with other activities that have nothing to do with social media,
Right.
or maybe even raising money,
Hmm.
uh, for that matter. But for those people who are on social, I think that there's a couple of realities. One, it is going to take time, so for those 24 hours, or probably really for those 36 hours, 48 hours, because you've got the day before, the day of, and the day after that you probably want to tend to as well.
Right.
you know get those apps on your phone and turn on those notifications so that you know when somebody's engaging in your content and you can immediately respond to them. So you're
Hmm.
probably going to have your phone tucked to your hip. Over those 24 36 hours, you might have to sleep with it. If your partner doesn't like that, sleep in another room for the night.
Yeah.
But that's a reality. I think, again, choose those contests that you might want to participate in, or the things that might align most greatly with your organization, and don't feel like you need to participate in all of them, because you don't. um, as well. I would lean into focusing on the engagement with the people who are. So don't worry about like, oh, 100 people didn't like this post. If 5 people liked this post and you were able to engage back and forth with them in some way, then that's a win. Because there's a great chance you might have turned one of them into a donor, whether new or an existing one, as well. And then the other thing, and it might sound cliche, um, but you've got to have fun with it,
Hmm.
as well. You've got to dig into whatever it is, um, that you enjoy about social media. Like, you have to ask that question, like, why am I on social to begin with? Okay.
Hmm.
Again, like, I'm on Facebook now because I have to do it for my job, right? I'm on Instagram because I really love taking photos as a human,
Hmm.
right? I like capturing beautiful things and sharing those out in the world. So how do I want to channel taking photography, capturing beautiful things, and hopefully spreading joy with somebody else? Like, how can I do that to spread a message about an organization that I care about or that I work with in the day too? You've got to tap into what that means personally, and then bring it into the work of the organization, all year round, but,
Right.
particularly, within that day too. Um, and then sleep really well the next day.
Hmm.
Um, the other thing I'll say too is that I think that, like, we want to be planned about how we engage in social media, right? But we don't want to be so planned in a way, that we've scheduled a bunch of posts so that then we don't have to worry about social media that day. Because, first of all, Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whoever it is, they're going to be like, oh, that person scheduled 12 posts for this day. I can tell
Hmm.
that because technology tells me that, right?
Hmm.
So they're not really engaging in the content. What they're doing is just putting out some messages, right? So Facebook, or, again, the algorithm is going to push those posts down because of that. But set that alarm that says, like, you know what, at 6 a.m., go out and type this thing, however it is that you're feeling about the day, and at
Hmm.
10 o'clock, go out and put this thing out into the world, sort of thing. But don't be so planned that all of a sudden you become the robot and you miss out on the opportunity for the human connection that really, I think, social media is intended to be about. through a
Yeah.
technology platform.
And can be about, Ted, it sounds like some of the things that you've mentioned a number of different times, interaction and being authentic in your posting as two kind of important pieces of this. Do you have a best piece of advice you want to share with participating organizations as it relates to their social media?
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a broken record probably, but like, remember that you're communicating with people. I think is the piece of advice. And when you communicate with somebody, you're bringing yourself to them. And I think that the other thing, sometimes we've gotten, again, in kind of the work that we do at NewBad, every once in a while an organization will, push back a little bit about like, do we really need to be that funny? Or do we need to be, that lighthearted? We're a serious organization, and there's a time and a place for that as well. But man, you surprise your audience when you show, that you're not just a buttoned up suit and tie sort of person, or, sort of a organization as well. I can be that, and I am at times. And I can also be a sweatshirt and a t-shirt sort of kind of guy. And you're going to, know that I like Bravo TV, and, my second concert was a Britney Spears concert, and all those things, right? Like those are all part of who I am too, right? And it's okay to bring that sort of personality and perspective, to your social world, because that's probably what you're already doing on your personal pages. So why not bring some of that to your organizational pages too? Again, as appropriate.
Right. Well, I think part of what we want to do at South Dakota Gives is give organizations a reason to do something that they might not otherwise do, because you can come to work in a toothbrush costume if you're doing the Floss Like a Boss campaign with Horizons Healthcare Foundation, because we're having a costume contest. So hopefully the Day of Giving gives organizations some permission with their donors, with their themselves, with their staff, to do some things they wouldn't ordinarily do.
I was also thinking back to some of the client work that we do at the NewMed Group, and we've done some giving days for organizations. And, we did one a couple of years ago where we launched a giving day for a school, a few years ago now. And I remember like we were trying to come up with like the concept and the idea that we were going to launch this giving day. And the school mascot is a wyvern, which is like a mythical dragon creature that, sometimes breathes fire and sometimes breathes like ice, and we were like, well, what if this was about like firing up, the alumni base, right? This idea, fire up with the dragon.
Yeah.
And we thought, like, we're launching this giving day, what if we just built anticipation around like, why is this dragging flying around, the college, and why is it in major, cities? And we posted these like quick 10-second videos where like you just see a water glass, in the water like shaking because like the wyvern was coming up, right? And then it would just have the date on it and a hashtag, and we never even said the word giving day, right? We did all of these things in the weeks leading up to the giving day to build anticipation and excitement for the day, without even saying that, hey, we're going to ask you for money on, X and X a date. And all the people, this alumni base, this 30,000, alumni base of this college, were like, what on earth is going on here, right? And then, we reveal that, here's a day that we're going to try to raise X amount of dollars, yada, yada, yada. And all of a sudden you had everybody's attention, because of that too. It was just a wacky idea that we had, at the start of the pandemic, when we were like, oh, now we need to raise money too. for an organization. And I remember the school being like, what? That's what you want to do? But they went with it, right? They went with the crazy idea, and it paid off in a big way too. So, what's the big crazy idea that you've got?
Mm-hmm.
And don't discard it. Actually listen to it, because there's a reason that you came up with that idea. And it might just be the way to, elevate the community's awareness of whatever it is that you do, on that day as well.
Yeah, be memorable.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're coming up here on our time, Ted, so I want to give you some time for some last thoughts. And then also, you've mentioned video a couple of times, like a 10-second video even for the campaign that you just mentioned with the dragon. We want to spend some time next week talking about video and how that works or can work for the South Dakota Day of Giving. But if you want to share some last thoughts here on social media and tell us a bit about next week and talking about video, who might want to tune in for that?
Yeah. So first of all, here's a great example. So Move to Heal South Dakota, I think, has asked a question on Facebook, and you're asking, what video platform are you up for, or what are you using this for? And so we're using a platform called StreamYard, which allows us to stream to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Allows you to connect all your social media and then stream live. It's super easy, StreamYard.com. You can get information, and it's fairly cheap as well. So, but this is a really great example, right, of an organization engaging in the content that you and I are, speaking about right now, or Rare by Design. I can see that you posted, a comment about this, and thankfully it's positive. But again, you know what I mean? This shows that people are actually engaging with the content rather than, listening to it, but also playing on their phone or doing something else, answering an email and things like that too. So, these are just great examples of how social media can engage with people in a way that hopefully is meaningful and helpful.
We loved Rare by Designs. We loved Rare by Designs video on what changed during the pandemic for their organization. So glad they're here today listening to this too.
So video next week, I think our colleague, Tony Cody, is going to join us. He's our video editor and producer at the New Med Group. And he's going to give some tips and tricks on ways that you can record and create some simple video content to use on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, all of that good stuff too. And maybe we'll brainstorm some ideas as well on, what people might want to think about and do for the day.
That sounds great. And there's a place on the SD Gives website for people to post questions, or they can write an email to hello@South Dakota Gives.org. Send those out. If they have questions about social media, we'll try to get back with folks.
Yeah, and if they want to even respond, if they want to leave comments, hey Nami and hey Jen, if people want to leave comments on Facebook or YouTube as well, I'll try to, I'll respond during commercial breaks when I'm watching the Real Housewives reunion tonight as well. So
more engagement, right?
There you go. So feel free to, post online too, and we'll try to give you some answers.
Well, thanks, Ted, for sharing just a little bit of your wisdom with us today. And hopefully next week you'll be joining Tony to talk about video and some more tips for folks that are participating. We're so grateful that we have more than 400 organizations who are using the Day of Giving as a tool to further their work and just to celebrate generosity in South Dakota. So thanks everybody who's joined us. As Ted mentioned, if you have questions, please just post them on Facebook or send them to us over the website, and we will get back to you as we can.
Thanks, Kelly.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Catch you soon.